Welcome to Stab 2 with Commentary. I'm writer and director Joshua Patrick Dudley. As you can see, we start out right away with a special tribute to Stab-O-Vision from Scream 2, now updated in 4K. This was our first movie that we filmed in 4K, and a lot of it was a learning curve. We got a new camera and a new computer and a new editing program, so there was a lot to learn as we were going throughout the process. But overall, Stab 2 was a super fun movie to film, and I was really excited to complete it and to work with everyone. This house may look familiar because it was the house from the opening scene of the Stab reboot. And then we cut right into a Lifetime movie. The Lifetime movie was something I was actually really excited about in this too, because it plays on Scream 2's movie within a movie of Stab. And this is kind of our own level of that without it being an actual Stab movie. It's called Stabbed in the Back. You'll notice here me and Hannah Madison, and I added in these little titles of who's who's to make things easier for newer viewers and to maybe introduce some new information about the characters that people didn't know. And it actually stemmed from a mistake that we made. We forgot to have Nicole record a line in her first scene that explained that Ariana was Hannah's daughter. So instead of re-recording the line with just audio, I went back and edited in just using the titles to describe who the characters were. So a lot of this scene was actually filmed with the camera just on the tripod and me setting up shots and focusing them. So you'll notice there's not a lot of moving shots, which is not my favorite thing to do in the world, but I didn't have anyone to help me out with the camera in this. So this scene was actually pretty challenging to film. And when we first started filming it, I was using the basic settings on the camera. Like I said, there was a big learning curve in learning the new equipment in this. So we had this issue with the autofocus that it kept shifting in and out. So there's a lot of strange cuts in this scene, maybe not as noticeable to the audience as they are to me, but it definitely took some effort to make sure that the shots we were showing were in focus and didn't have the focus bouncing around and back and forth like that. So Hannah was really, really fun to film with, and we filmed this scene all in one night. The first night of filming was actually just me all by myself. And then Hannah came on the second night, and then there was a third night of filming that was with me, Mark, Corey, and Chris Jones, who plays the pizza man. So this is actually from the second night of filming when Hannah came, and she also brought her boyfriend at the time, Matthew, who was kind enough to volunteer to play Ghostface in the costume once Ghostface comes into the scene. So this was a really fun scene to film. We had a good time doing it. There's a lot of different takes and different angles, like I said, because it was just me setting up the camera on a tripod. Lanfear's Coffee is a tribute to my grandparents. On my mother's side, that's their original last name. And I needed a commercial in there, so I thought it would be fun to throw in a little family tribute. That's Dalen Castile and Mia Gaudette playing movie Joshua and movie Hannah from the Lifetime movie, which was, again, super, super fun to film. And you'll notice that they're on almost the exact same set as us, but there's a few minor differences. There's a lot more Ghostface decorating the movie set version of my apartment. They're on a different couch. There's different pillows. There's different lamps. There's all kinds of different stuff behind there to really distinguish that it wasn't the exact same location as this one. This is where stuff starts to get good. That's actually prop money, too. It was like the best looking prop money I've ever found. I do actually love this shot of Hannah coming out, too. And I added in the dogs barking in the background because I thought it would be a fun idea to kind of predict a little bit of danger when you hear the dogs barking. And the shot of the security cameras comes in handy because there was supposed to be a bunch of shots through the perspective of the security camera. We just never really got there. And there's Ghostface. So that's actually Matthew Nee, Hannah's boyfriend in the costume. And the stabs you see that actually penetrate her are on a mannequin made out of duct tape that we formed from Hannah's body. That's actually the mannequin in that shot right there. And the scene was super challenging to film. Not everybody is fully capable of doing stunts and understanding blocking. Considering that neither one of the actors actually has any stunt performance history, I think they actually did a pretty good job. And the shot of the mannequin going over the balcony was something I really wanted to do for a long time as a tribute to Cece Cooper in Scream 2 because I love Sarah Michelle Gellar. So a lot of people talk about this shot right here, how much they like that one shot of the door. I'm not sure why. It just felt like the natural thing for me to do there. So, and I did a lot of perspective shots in this too because it was something I was able to handhold the camera for and control. If you look closely, you'll actually notice that Hannah's body is missing. You should be able to see the tip of her head right there. I should have put the mannequin down there, but I forgot. So this is actually from the first night of filming where I was completely by myself. So every shot that you see in this, like I said, is something that I just set up the camera on the tripod and made sure that I was kind of in the shot and then filmed it on my own without anybody's help. And the voice was one of the trickier parts of this. Once I finally answer the phone and the killer starts to talk to me, because I was playing the lines through the phone as I was recording, and I kept hitting my phone with my face and it would stop the killer from talking. This shot of Ghostface is a cut-in that we added in on a night of reshoots because I didn't like the way the shots cut together. It was a really weird cut, so if you look closely, you can actually see that my phone is playing the audio and it's not in a phone call. And this is one of the shots, too, that I'm not quite in the right position of the shot that I would like to be in. But again, I was filming by myself and I couldn't really look at the camera while I was filming, so I just had to work with what I had here. And although I was filming alone, this was actually kind of really fun to film. I didn't have anyone else to worry about. It was a lot of work for me having to set up the lighting and the shots and everything, like I said. But I didn't have anyone else to worry about or direct. That's actually from a reshoot as well, that one shot right there, because I didn't have a good perspective shot through the door. I believe you could actually see the reflection of the camera in the glass, so I think Mark Haggett actually filmed that shot for me. And then this shot that you're about to see with the feet going up the stairs of the pizza man is also something we added in later, and it's actually Henry Columbert, who plays the killer in the movie, that got cut in. So Chris is a friend of Corey's, my cousin, so I wrote in a special part just for him, and it's the shortest little death scene in the entire world because Chris kept smiling while he was getting stabbed in the head. So it got cut really short, but we had a lot of fun filming it, and Chris did a really, really good job. My reaction there was a little over the top, but I kind of love it because remembering that these are the Stab movies, they are actually supposed to be a little over the top. Same thing with that shot of the door. That was also a cut-in during a reshoot night because the shot actually went out of focus. So you'll also notice too, because I wasn't familiar with the camera, the lighting kind of looks a little bit different from shot to shot. And this sequence has some really noticeable additions to it that were reshoots, and the camera had different settings, like right here, the coloring and everything changes. And you'll see a couple of those throughout because they were part of reshoots. That's actually Mark Haggett in the costume, and him and I have had a lot of stunt practice, so we kind of just really, really went for it. Of course, we rehearsed it first, but we dove right in. I'm not scared to get hurt, really, so we just kind of went for it, and I threw myself around, and Mark really threw me over that counter. The close-up of me getting stabbed was on the same mannequin that we threw over the balcony, just with my clothes on it. And this actually hurt Mark when I hit him with that picture frame, even though it's just like a tiny piece of cardboard in there, and the glass was added in digitally later. That close-up of my face hitting the stairs was filmed in slow motion and then sped up. That shot of the knife going into my back was super tricky to do as well, and little bits and pieces of that are from a reshoot as well. So it's not just Mark in the costume, it's also Henry Columbert, like I said, that plays the killer at the end of the movie, and Hannah's boyfriend Matthew Neese. So there's 3 different people that play the killer in this opening scene. This is all part of a reshoot too. All the shots of Mark. The shots of me solo are from the first night that we filmed with Mark, but a lot of Mark's shots came out blurry. And there was some funny stuff going on with his acting because he was trying to be extra crazy, and some of it was a little over the top, like Scooby-Doo-ish. He sounded like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. So I actually called him back, and we reshot all of his dialogue from this scene. And most of it went wonderfully. There's a few parts, like the cut that we're about to see coming up right here, where there's like a mistake because the knife's in the wrong hand. We never really see him grab me. And then all of a sudden his hand's on my neck and his knife is in the opposite hand. So it's just kind of something I was hoping the audience wouldn't quite notice as much, and we just rolled with it. But it was definitely something that drove me crazy during editing. So the shots of me and him together are also basically all from the reshoot. And you might notice like some of my makeup's a little bit different, like the blood makeup and stuff like that. That shot's still out of focus, which drives me crazy because it was part of the reshoot. But cleaning the blood off of the shirt that I'm wearing was such a pain in the butt because we had already filmed, I had already gotten bloody, and it was really, really tricky. I had to wash it like 5 times, and if you look close enough, you might be able to see that there was already some faintly colored blood still on there. Mark had really limited availability, so writing him in as the killer in the opening scene was both methodical and something that needed to happen because he didn't have a lot of time to commit to the movie. So it worked out, though, because he was supposed to be the killer in Stab 7, and he never got to play that big reveal, so this was kind of like me making it up to him. So I had a lot of fun with Mark. We had so much fun shooting this scene. It was great. This shot coming up, this digital effects shot done by our special effects guy is so good. And you see Mark's eyeball pop out. I absolutely love it. And that's the entrance of my cousin Corey, who's playing a cop in this movie, which I believe initially he was a little hesitant about because playing a cop for him is definitely not anything like his real life. And all the shots that you're seeing of him besides his entrance are actually from a reshoot too. And you'll notice his name tag is actually missing because we forgot to put it back on him. But the original take of it just didn't work. We had filmed so late and everybody was so tired that it needed to be redone. I love the Stab 2 logo that our special effects guy created for us. It's so fresh and cool looking, and it helps match some of our other logos, so that was really, really cool. So this is a documentary that's supposed to help the audience understand where the characters are kind of standing at the beginning of the movie, and it does get reiterated a few times, especially with the murder podcast that shows up. But this was actually made by David Vigil from Lambent Entertainment, and I kind of partnered with him and asked him to help me out with a few things. So this is one of the things that he made for the movie, and he also filmed the news anchor that we'll see later. And I think this documentary came out so good. The composer Seth Hayes did a really, really good job finding the type of music that should be in a documentary style like that. And it's fun to see the footage and the images that David actually worked into this, because a lot of them are from our past. And I love the stock footage too that's used in here because it's just so cool. Like, it really does feel like a real documentary. So again, though, this was just something to kind of explain the storyline to people that hadn't quite caught it in the first scene. And like I said, it will get reiterated again when we hear the first murder podcast. And the murder podcast is really added in as a way to recap everything that people may be missing, because this is a low-budget YouTube movie and maybe not everybody's paying attention throughout the whole thing. So I felt like it was a good idea to do a couple of recaps and kind of remind everybody about what was going on and what the story was and why the things that are happening are happening. But David did a wonderful job on this, and I was so happy when I got it from him. It was one of the last things that we added into the movie. Same with the murder podcast. They were just things that I felt like the movie could use a little extra, and these are definitely extra. That's David Affleck playing a detective, and I love him. It was like the quickest, simplest shoot with him filming that. It took about 15 minutes, and we got his shots done. And he did such a good job as the detective. I love everything about his really short performance, but a really great performance in this movie.
In place to protect Joshua while detectives work to solve the case, or is it another attempt by his cousin who still remains on active?
And this girl that we're about to see, I love her. I don't know her. She's friends with David. She's just great as this innocent bystander who's sharing her opinion on what's happening. So I absolutely love that she had a little part in this, and she did such a great job. I wish I could get her into one of the actual movies because I would love to work with her.
The success of her book and her Lifetime movie that exposed Joshua.
So not only did this documentary give everyone an update as to where the script was, but it also leads us into our next scene by introducing Rachel's character and kind of gets us pre-caught up with her so we have a basic understanding about what's about to happen in the next scene. So here we see Rachel entering the hotel, and she's followed by Ashley Swank and Sherry Lee. They're just coming back from a book signing. We really wanted to sell the fact that Rachel's book really took off, and it was technically a #2 bestseller, almost a #1, and establish where these characters are. Rachel has now hired Ashley and Sherry as her assistants or managers or whatever you want to call them. And I think everyone in the scene did such a great job. Rachel's character on the confusion about being back in Manchester. Sherry's character really focused on getting likes and clicks on Instagram and getting Rachel to the top. And Ashley's character, who's just completely had it with everyone. And maybe she does enjoy her job, but she's just at that place where she's like, fuck this shit. Let's just do what we're supposed to do and get it done. So the contrast between all three of them is actually great. It's a nice blend of comedy and drama and I think real life and what a real life situation may be like for an author who's traveling around, who's written this type of book that kind of exposes someone's misdoings or their supposed misdoings. So I love the shots in here. Filming in this hotel was not super pleasant though. It was about 100-degree day, and I don't think we ever got the hotel room to cool down more than like 85 degrees, we just kept watching the temperature go up and up and up. So you'll notice as the scenes go on that the actresses tend to be a little more sweaty, and maybe their hair's starting to frizz out a little, and their hair goes up. They're wearing less clothing as it goes on, just because it was absolutely so hot in here. And I'll apologize now for the audio in these scenes. I couldn't subject them to too much more heat, so we definitely had to leave the ACs on it. And it's not as bad and as noticeable in a lot of the scenes, but you can definitely hear it in some of the takes, and the background noise is just absolutely horrendous. But it was something we had to deal with because we were melting. Filming in summer is never fun, and that's a lesson we learned in Stab 6, but we did it again. Ashley's line right there, I love so much. We had to do several takes of it because I kept laughing during it. I just love how fed up she is with everyone's bullshit, and she just kind of takes it out on Sherry through the whole thing. Poor Sherry, she's the whipping girl in this scene. Rachel's realization here, too, that they're back in Manchester and they kind of duped her into coming here, is played so nuanced and casually that it's like, how upset is she really about it? Or does she agree with the publicity stunt? But she's definitely upset, and I like the way the scene plays out in the end, and I like the way that Ashley quickly jumps to defend the situation and try to reconcile things between Josh and Rachel, because that's a relationship we've established for many, 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 many movies. So to have us separate was a fun new dynamic, I think, for both of us to play. This shot of Rachel going and scrolling through her contacts and landing on my name and then not actually calling me is just hilarious to me. She did such a good job. So this is actually the first Murders in Manchester podcast, and like I said, this was one of the things that we added in pretty much after production had wrapped. The actress playing Jennifer Jolie's voice is Jennifer Drummond, a fantastic actress that I've worked with before, and I love her dearly. And she actually had a different part in the movie, a much bigger part on camera, but she had some family stuff going on and she had to leave production after filming only one scene. So this was kind of my way of still being able to involve her in the production. And her voice is just so perfect for a podcast. I think her diction, the way she speaks, she could actually have a murder podcast that people would listen to in real life because it was just so good. But I'm happy that we were able to include Jennifer still after all was said and done, because I felt bad that she had to leave production. So it was really cool to have her involved in some way, even though it may not be the biggest part in the world. But she does recur through the whole movie, so she has a pretty decent standing. Her voice has a pretty big presence. Now we actually get to see another scene from the Lifetime movie with Dalen playing me again. And this is also where we find out that Rachel played herself in the Lifetime movie. So not only did she write the book that the Lifetime movie is based on, she probably wrote the script for the movie and then cast herself to play herself. But let's be honest, Rachel's awesome and she deserves it. But that was a really fun scene to film, and at first they kind of played it normal, and then we did a few takes of that, and then I was like, you know what, let's really step up the drama. It's a Lifetime movie. Like, let's add as much cheese on top of this as we can. And once we added in that extra level of cheese, I think it really clicked in for them. So this sequence is another sequence that was shot by myself yet again. Ethan was coming for filming, but I actually sat down and filmed a good portion of my stuff alone without him there. So he's not actually outside of my door right here. And then it's funny because the shots of Ethan in this, we actually filmed this scene twice too. And we don't usually do a lot of reshoots, but we had time on this movie and I wanted to fix a bunch of stuff, so we went back and fixed it. So all the shots of Ethan in the scene are actually from the reshoot, because in the original scene, he was wearing a different shirt that he couldn't find. So when he came back for the reshoots, we had to refilm the whole scene because he couldn't find his original wardrobe, which is one of the downfalls of having the cast provide their own wardrobe from their own closets. It doesn't always work out. That little sequence was actually really hard to film too, just because of the motion in it and trying to set up the camera to find a spot that would see us and the lighting would stay right. And you'll notice that the lighting doesn't stay right. But I love Ethan. I love working with him. I have such a great time with him every time. And you'll see shots like that of me. Those are actually from the original shoot. So anything at this angle that you see of me is from the original shoot. And then it cuts to the reshoot when Ethan is involved in the shot too. So it may have been a little bit tricky, but the reshoot especially was super, super easy for us to film because we had already done it once. So we somehow weeks later still remembered all of our lines, and it didn't take any rehearsal because we knew what the whole scene was. So I think it probably only took us about 20 minutes to refilm the scene, maybe a half hour at the most. but it was something we knocked out very quickly, and I had such a good time doing it. Like I said, anyone out there making movies, cast Ethan Rogers. You're going to love him on your set. You're going to love the performance he gives. And he's just so genuine and fun to work with that I would cast him in every single movie if I could. I did also enjoy giving him a different type of character to play. His character in the last movie was a little heavy with the drama, so it was fun to just kind of make him this chilled out stoner guy. And he's kind of Josh's only friend in this movie. He's the only person that Josh can actually still count on to come and talk to him, and he believes Josh's side of the story and doesn't think that Josh is a serial killer, which, based on past events, Josh probably should be the serial killer, but he's not. So now we move to Nicole Linton's house, and this is the scene I was talking about at the beginning of the movie where we forgot to record Nicole's first line. She was originally on the phone with someone and explains that they're dropping off Hannah's daughter Ariana to come stay with her, and Nicole is now Ariana's caretaker. So that's the reason those little titles got added in of everyone's name and who they are, because I needed to explain that Ariana, bam, right there, is Hannah's daughter. So she's the only one that really kind of has an extra introduction in hers. But it was the only way that I could fix it without having to bring Nikki back to ADR just one line. But the scene was also something that we filmed very, very quickly. And if you haven't noticed, Nicole actually has 3 kids in real life already. So I wanted her house to look like there was kids living in it too. So I told her not to clean up as much as possible because I wanted it to be very present that she has 2 kids and a baby living there, and now she's adding a 4th kid, just so we could really feel the amount of pressure that Nicole's character was under and how much she goes through and how strong of an independent woman she is. Because Nikki is a strong, independent woman, as you will see later on in her attack scene. She's definitely capable of protecting and caring for her children, and I love working with her. Those are actually my red Adidas that you can see in that shot too, so that's a little bit of a mistake that we left there. Now we move back to the hotel to catch up with Rachel again, and we see her working on a book. If you look closely, you can actually see that this is my computer because up in the right-hand corner it says Joshua Dudley, but I try to keep it out of focus. And the scene that the chapter that she's writing there is actually really funny. This is one of the scenes where we really struggled with the audio too because of the AC, so it took a lot of trying to fix it, and there is a little bit of ADR added in, especially when Erica comes in and sits down on the couch. The couch made these horrible farting noises when people sat down or got up off of it, so we tried to fix the audio whenever that happened. So Erica's character is actually an actress from the Lifetime movie who lives out in California, which is actually never stated in the movie either, and it wasn't something that was in the script. It was just kind of implied that she wasn't local when Rachel says, "You came all the way here." But we never really learned how far she actually traveled to do this investigation. So she's actually from California and flew all the way out to the East Coast just to come and talk to Rachel about the character she was playing in this Lifetime movie because she's not sure how based in actual fact it is, and her morals and beliefs kind of don't want to allow her to come back to play this character again if there's no concrete evidence that this character really existed and that anything like the Stab reboot ever happened to the quote-unquote real Claire Matthews. So her guilty conscience kind of ate away at her for playing that part in the Lifetime movie, and she comes to Rachel for clarification that it was all based on true events, which we find out later in the movie it was not. It was only based off of a letter that Rachel received. So Rachel in the scene is also kind of trying to convince not just Erica but herself that it was validated when she wrote the book and turned it into a Lifetime movie. So this was another quick and easy scene to film. It was a long day of filming because Sherry was another one that had a super limited schedule, so every scene that Sherry is in was filmed in one day. So this was a day that started at 2 p.m. and ended at 2 a.m. Not for everybody involved because it ended with Sherry's death scene, but everything in the hotel, I had a blast filming. These 3 ladies work so well together, and it's just so much fun. I love these time-lapse shot. It's something I do a lot in the movies just to kind of establish when it's changing to night. And then this leads us into what is technically the opening scene of this movie. Even though there was already an opening with me and the pizza guy and Mark, I kind of survived that, so it's not the official opening. So this is the official opening of the other killer, played by Henry Collimbert and Ethan Rogers. These are kind of their first kills because they may have coerced Mark into killing people in the beginning, but they weren't actually partnered with him and working with him. And that's never fully explained in the movie either. but it was definitely interesting to have two opening scenes. And I love this opening scene. Chris and Mackenzie are actually engaged in real life. And it was just a really fun scene to play. And it took 2 nights of filming. The first night we did all this kind of stuff where the killer isn't present in the scene. And then anything with like their attacks and death scenes was filmed on the second night. And Mark Haggett actually comes back and plays the killer, even though it's not actually Mark in the costume. It's supposed to be Henry or Ethan. There's this running joke in this movie, too, that the real killer in this movie is water, because in the opening scene, I'm washing my hands and I don't hear Hannah scream. And then in this scene, Chris is in the shower and unable to defend his girlfriend who's getting murdered only feet away from him. It was fun, too, to have them watching the previous movie as well. And that's one of the rare shots that the movie was actually on the screen. And we didn't have to add it in post-production. They were actually watching the Stab reboot while we filmed it, which also proved to be a little bit tricky because we had to keep rewinding it and pausing it and getting it back to the right spot to make sure it looked like the scene was continuing properly. So Mackenzie gets the famous phone call here, and because she's not involved in the Stab reboot initially, I wanted to clarify that to the audience, that she's kind of just thrown into this situation because of her boyfriend in the movie, Chris. So she doesn't really know what's going on, and I'm sure her character can sense that it feels like the Stab reboot, but I don't think she thinks anything like that would ever actually happen in real life. So this was kind of fun to play on. And this was one of the scenes that we didn't actually have the audio for the killer right away. So, like, whoever wasn't on camera, like Mark or Chris, I believe it was Chris this night because Mark wasn't here. Chris is actually reading the lines from the script to her, so she had something to work off of, which I just thought was funny. This shot of Sherry getting killed on the counter is actually a little bit of foreshadowing for the scene too, because Mackenzie also gets stabbed multiple times, but then the killer displays her body by gutting her and laying her on the kitchen counter. Again, something that I'm not sure everyone viewing the movie will actually catch, but it was a fun little tribute to that. And Mackenzie did such a good job in this scene. I had never worked with her before or knew if she had really any acting experience, but I think she just killed it. And I love the phone call. I'm a Chucky fan, so I loved that the conversation and the trivia was about Chucky. And Mackenzie didn't actually know a lot about Chucky. It's not ranking very high on her list of horror movies that she watched, even though she's a horror fan. So her having to pronounce Don Mancini was funny. It was a challenge, but we got through it. So that shot right there is actually when the beginning of the second night of filming takes place. So we cut on the first night. We had filmed a little bit more of the sequence, and it actually worked out a little bit different. She went to the door behind her instead of this door. And then I kind of saw their video camera and decided it would be fun to add in that and have Ghostface pop up on their video display, which I just thought was a really cool feature of the house, so it was cool to show off. And their house is actually one of the reasons I wanted to film here, because I love the layout of their condo that they have, and that blue lighting is actually part of their apartment. Same with the red lighting. We did bump it up a little bit to make it really pop, and there was initially a shot of Ghostface walking through the door so you could see how he entered the apartment, but I liked the mystery of where he came from, because you don't know if it's actually Chris coming out of the shower and killing her, which you'll find out in a moment that he's actually in the shower still, so you know it's not Chris. But just for that half a second, it kind of makes you wonder. This was really, really fun to film, and I actually love the shots in it. Like I said, that's Mark in the costume again, too, and he's had a lot of experience playing the killer in the costume, so it was really easy to work with. And everybody in the scene was just a trooper, like Mackenzie getting dragged away right here, and the fight scene between Chris and Mark. It was all just so much fun to film, and they were all so gung-ho and ready to go, and I loved everything about filming with them. I had such a great time with them. This was fun to film too, Chris falling in the blood. I love covering Chris and all of the actors in blood. It's like, you know you're in a horror movie, right? So here comes all the blood. But again, the lighting in here was something I really, really liked. And you can actually see the extension cord from one of the lights in that shot that I had set up to add in a little bit of extra color. So a little bit of a downfall there. It's not super, super noticeable, and I was going to crop it out, but I didn't. So there it is again, the extension cord that was running light all around. But I even love the reflection of the light on the floor in these scenes. It's just really, really cool. I like the way this whole scene played out and the coloring, and it's so saturated and aggressively over the top. And Mackenzie actually looks dead. That little reflection of the blue light bouncing off her just really makes her appear to be a corpse. And the guts hanging out, that was really, really fun to do. And this whole sequence was really, really fun to do. This scene took quite a while to film. I think I exhausted the actors a little bit just because I was really meticulous in the shots that I wanted and how I wanted it to play out and what I wanted the stunts to look like. But in the end, I think it came out great. This is one of my favorite kills, too. I love this shot, which we actually did practically, but then the digital effects guy actually added in some more stuff and fixed it. So it came out even better than it already was. But the original shots of it were actually pretty great, too, except for we used a blade that was cut in half. So you could actually, when he pulled the blade out of his throat, you could tell that it was only a half blade. So that was what I initially wanted corrected in that scene. But then we went back and digitally added in the rest of the blade throughout the whole thing.
Seems as if Joshua Patrick Dudley may be innocent after all.
Some of the podcasts are a little funny to me because it also kind of implies that this person doing the podcast, Jennifer Jolie, may actually be somehow involved because she gets her information very, very quickly. But that's why there's a little fade to black there, and we sit on the black for a while too, just to show that there was actually a little bit of time in between Chris getting killed before the podcast was released. But again, the podcasts were just basically used as recaps in case you somehow fell asleep watching one of our YouTube movies.
Andrea Arnold for a comment on the situation, but was unsuccessful. Could there be an actual ghost face on the loose in Manchester? My sources say yes. Find out more on the next episode of Murders in Manchester.
So now we move back to the hotel to see what Rachel's character is up to, and she's watching Stabbed in the Back, an all-day marathon on Lifetime. This was another really fun scene to film. That's my good friend Emily Powell added into this scene as the movie version of Piper Belmont, who would have been based on a quote-unquote real character in Rachel's book, even though she wasn't. And of course, again, Erica Audi playing the quote-unquote real Claire Matthews. I like Rachel's reactions to her own movie too, as if she hasn't seen it before. And I love the all-day marathon. I think someone else owes me more money. It was just so funny. I tried to infuse this movie with a lot of comedy because, like I said, I know that we make really low-budget movies for YouTube, so I try to find all the ways possible to entertain the audience and the viewers. And the level of cheese, like I said, is expected in the Stab movies, and some people frown upon it that we added in. But it's what they're kind of supposed to be. So our movies don't actually follow the proper Stab timeline. They will start to when we get to Stab 4 again. But it's still fun to play on the direct-to-video feeling of the Stab movies. So Rachel has gotten phone calls from the killer before, but this is one of the longest and most intense, and it's definitely presented a little bit differently because Rachel's kind of into getting the phone call. She doesn't super feel threatened by the killer. She thinks it's just a prank because of the Lifetime movie. So she doesn't really take it too seriously, and nobody really knows that the second quote-unquote opening scene has happened yet, where Chris and Mackenzie died. She is about to find out in this movie, too. And all of this was filmed in one take because I really wanted it to feel like real life, like it was playing out in real time. So originally I wasn't going to cut away, but I did end up cutting away a couple times to show her watching the TV and see what we're flipping through, just so we could kind of throw some tributes into our older movies as well. But it was fun to do, and it was super challenging, and the shot's a little bit out of focus, so it's another shot in the movie that I wish I could refilm. And for some reason, it's the close-ups of the phone calls that I seem to keep getting out of focus, and I don't have an external monitor, so everything that I'm looking at is just on the screen on the camera, so sometimes it's actually hard to land the focus. So it sucks that the background's more in focus than Rachel in this shot, but this is Rachel's kind of realization now, too, that this is actually something serious and it's not just a prank, especially when she turns on the news. And the news sequence, like I said, was also made by David Vigil from Landbin Entertainment, and it was really fun to partner with him and to have him do this kind of stuff for us, because not only did it save me time while editing, but we got to add in actors that weren't from around here, that weren't able to come out here to be in the actual production. So I very much enjoyed working with him and Landbin Entertainment. And Rachel just eats this scene up. She did such a great job with it, being able to remember those many lines back to back to back to back. And again, another scene that we didn't have the voice of the killer for, so it was very challenging for her to just have someone reading the lines to her. But she did great. This entrance is in the bloopers because it took so many shots. It was just starting to get late at night, and everyone was getting a little bit of the tired giggles and being a little bit silly. So I think we did something like 15 different takes of them trying to come through that door, and they just kept ending with everybody in laughter. So it was really funny because it is kind of a serious scene that's being presented, and we just everyone was so tired and out of it, and hot and so hot that it just kind of became like a funny scene. Like, I love that reaction of them too. That's cheese to the max too. They're gaping open mouths in shock. So I really, like I said, these three working together is just so much fun. They all get along so well. They all came so prepared and knew their lines, and it just made this day of hot, sweaty filming so much easier. And I think we all really, really enjoyed the time that we had on set together here. And I know that they were all goofing off and having fun when we weren't rolling. So sometimes I wish I could participate in that a little bit more. But when we're not rolling, I'm running around setting stuff up and changing lighting and making sure the props are ready and prepping for the rest of the filming for the day. So I don't always get to be involved in the fun behind the scenes stuff. But I'm so glad that the actors come and get to enjoy their time with each other. In this scene, poor Sherry's character, like, sure, her character's a little narcissistic, but in reality, she's trying to help Rachel, and Rachel and Ashley just kind of treat her like shit until Rachel ultimately ends up firing her. So Sherry's character doesn't get treated the best in this movie, but her acting is just spot on. Sherry just absolutely kills it in this. The small, nuanced levels of her being offended or trying to understand the situation and trying to understand why these two are being so rude to her, it was just something that I haven't really seen from a lot of the actors before, and I was so impressed. Ashley, in the script, hugs everybody for some reason, and she's super lovable in real life, but trust me, nobody wanted to be hugging in this heat. This scene back at my house now, actually, we didn't show, this is from Theta that we're seeing on the TV, one of our original movies that never got finished, but originally it was Night of the Living Dead, because they're supposedly in public domain now. However, it created a copyright claim because of the music that was used in the Night of the Living Dead film, and I didn't want to pay for the rights to it, so I subbed it out with a different shot. This scene, too, almost got a reshoot, because I couldn't find some of the footage for it, and luckily I ended up finding it, because I think Corey came back a good 6 or 7 times to either do reshoots or to film additional scenes that were added into the movie. So the fact that I didn't have to bring him back to reshoot this was just, I think, heaven for both of us. But this is a really simple scene where Corey comes and explains to Josh, you know, that Chris and Mackenzie got killed and that he is actually on the suspect list. So Corey's character really tries to watch out for his cousin in this movie, and I feel like that's a good dynamic of us in real life too. Corey always has my back, and he is so super enthused about being in the movies, so I just love working with him. He's another one that's always prepared, and he takes it seriously, but he's still able to have ass tons of fun while we do it. Another funny thing about these scenes in my house, look at my poor plant on that table. That plant just starts beautiful at the beginning of the movie and then slowly dies throughout production, and then you'll slowly see it start to regain some consciousness and life as the movie goes on because I'm trying to nurse it back to health. The makeup on my face for my previous injuries, it's been a month since the opening scene where Mark attacked me. So after we filmed a bunch of the scenes, I realized that the bruise on my forehead probably wouldn't still be there. So I'm just kind of going through the movie with this huge bruise on my head. I do still like the little cuts on the bridge of my nose from my face getting slammed into the staircase. But the bruise on my forehead is a little off-putting to me throughout the whole thing. Oh, and I was actually incorrect. This shot right here is actually a reshoot. Because my character just turned around and I forgot that there was this whole little sequence where I take out my phone and text the cast of the Stab reboot, which there's actually like 5 different versions of me texting them too, different versions of the graphics on the screen. But that shot of me was just a reshoot one night. This scene in the parking garage is one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. It was one of my favorite scenes to film, and it's one of my favorite scenes to watch. I like the lighting. I like the real atmosphere. It shows you a tiny bit more of Manchester, so it doesn't feel as closed in because we are in the apartments and the hotel a lot. So to have this big, wide open, sprawling set with the beautiful backdrop of the Manchester brick buildings and stuff was really, really, really cool to do. And it's also a great tribute to Scream 4 when Sydney fires her assistant, which was not intentional when I was writing the script. And then once I realized what was going on, I kind of amped up the level of tribute to Scream 4. I love Alison Brie in that movie. I love her in everything, actually. But so this was a nice, fun little tribute to Alison Brie as well. Sherry was actually really excited to not have to get bloody during her death scene because it meant that she could wear cuter clothes that she didn't care about ruining. So I love the way she's dressed. It's so business beautiful, and she's so beautiful. This was another scene we didn't have the audio from Michael, who does the voice of the killer, recorded. So Henry, who plays the killer in the costume and in the movie, is actually reading the lines off camera. So that shot of the garage is actually part of a reshoot too. After we finished filming, I came home and I cut everything together and went back and refilmed that shot because it was missing. That sound effect of the car alarm is the exact same sound effect of the car alarm in Scream 4. And that was kind of the ultimate version of the tribute to Scream 4, was to have the same car alarm noise. Filming in this car was really, really fun and challenging at the same time too, because lighting it inside a car is always hard because you get this kind of harsh lighting when you throw it up on them, and you don't want to see all the shadows because you're kind of like, well, where's the light coming from? So that part got a little bit tricky, but I think a lot of it played out so well, and I actually ended up darkening the scenes in the car too because I had overlit it. This is one of my favorite shots in the whole movie, though. It almost made the trailer, but I didn't want to give away anything about Sherry's death scene, so it didn't make the trailer. And I love that it plays on the horror movie tropes that she's expecting to happen too. There's no one in her backseat, her car started, but I think it's kind of a dead giveaway when we cut to this side angle right here that something's about to happen. Bam! And there's Ghostface. That glass is all digital. Sherry's scream is so epic, and I think the soundtrack and the sound effects kind of like took out how epic her scream was. It was so epic that cops started to circle the parking garage because we did not ask permission to film in this parking garage. It's just a public parking garage, and we did it very guerrilla style. We just kind of showed up and went for it and hoped that nothing went wrong, and nothing went wrong, so it actually worked out. The idea to have Sherry's car light on fire and her kind of blow up and burn inside, when I wrote it, I knew it was crazy and out there, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. So my special effects guy really came through on this. He did so many better effects than I would have been able to do, and I'm so impressed with the way the scene turned out, especially considering, like I said, super low budget YouTube movie. I think it came out fucking great, and I love the scene so much, and it's a fun way to kill someone differently that we haven't done before, and it's not just stabbing again.
Welcome back to Murders in Manchester. Explosive news on this episode, as police have just released reports that stab actress Sherry Lee was attacked last night in a parking garage and met her demise in a fiery blaze when her car was set aflame. Security camera footage, which was sent to me by a private source, reveals it was indeed someone in a ghost face costume that caused the explosion. Why would someone be targeting the cast of the Stab franchise? Who's under the ghost face mask? All that and more will be revealed right here on Murders in Manchester. See you in the next episode. Until then, lock your doors and don't answer your phone, especially if you're a former cast member of the Stab films. Stay safe out there.
This scene out in the parking lot was also a lot of fun to film, but it was also on one of the days where it was 600,000 fucking degrees outside, so we were all melting. The sun was presenting a lot of problems too because of how bright it would make the shots, and I'd have to keep adjusting the camera. So we kept trying to film only when we were under the clouds, which also became an issue later because it actually turned into a thunderstorm that we just narrowly beat. Once we saw those dark clouds rolling in, filming just really ramped into overdrive, and we dove in and filmed as fast as we could. So this is one of the only times that you get to see the killer in the movie, and it's kind of a surprise that it's Henry, whose name is unknown. He's just the Uber driver in this shot. But it's a fun way to work him into it so that he is actually present in the movie beforehand, before he's revealed as the killer. And this is the first time that we get to meet the stabbed in the back actors, or the rest of the stabbed in the back actors in real life playing themselves. So it was funny because I gave them their actual names from real life to play, but they're playing movie Hollywood actor versions of themselves too. So this was actually a really fun scene to film. There was a lot of random guests of the hotel that we were in their parking lot. There was a lot of the guests from the hotel watching us film, which might have been a little bit awkward, but we tore it up and we did a great job. And I absolutely love a lot of the shots in this too. This camera really loves sunlight, and seeing this stuff shot in 4K is just, it's really neat to look at sometimes. It's absolutely beautiful compared to the cameras we've used in the past. But again, there is that huge learning curve with me trying to use it, and I really I'm not a huge fan of tripods, even though I like steady shots and stuff like that. So almost all the filming in this movie, especially when I'm not in the scenes, is handheld, just to give it that kind of live, this is happening right now type feeling, while still having a slightly cinematic effect to it. You can really see the dark cloud starting to roll in behind Erica here. So it actually works out later in the movie because one of the scenes we added in is filmed in the rain, so it slowly gets to the rainstorm. This next scene is one of the hardest scenes that I had to film in the movie because we couldn't align people's schedules. So everyone is filmed separately except for Ashley and Nicole. They showed up at the same time. I was able to schedule them. And so we shot all of their side together. Corey was supposed to be there as well, and obviously I was there too. But Corey messed up his schedule, the only mistake he made in the whole movie, and he wasn't able to be there on time. So I didn't really do any wide group shots because it wasn't really possible to do any wide group shots. So Nicole and Ashley filmed first, and then when they left, I filmed all of my lines by myself, and then Corey showed up, so I filmed all of his lines, and then Ethan's lines are all filmed on a completely different day. So a good portion of the scene was filmed on the same day, except for Ethan. And the way I did it was I just kind of labeled where everyone was sitting, and in between takes I would tell the actors, like, okay, so that line is being delivered to Corey and he's standing in front of this door, so look over here when you're talking to Corey. My character is sitting in this chair, so look over here when you're talking to me. Ethan's over here under the lamp, so if you're talking to Ethan, look in that direction. Same thing. Ashley and Nicole are on the couch, so if you're looking at them, Ashley's here, Nicole's there. And it made filming a little bit easier because we didn't have to wait for everyone to know their lines and hit their cues and stuff like that. But like I said, it presented a lot of challenges, especially in editing and in the delivery of some of the lines. Because when you don't have the other actor there and you don't hear how they're delivering their lines, you can kind of only guess how they're delivering their lines. So to try to respond to them can get a little tricky to make sure that it sounds like it's in the same conversation. I think there's only a few times that it happens in here that it doesn't quite sound like we're in the same conversation. It's one of these next lines where Corey's like, so what are the rules of a Stab reboot? The way he says it doesn't really sound like he's responding to someone talking about the rules of, fan films, not the Stab reboot. So that's one of the ones I wish I could fix. There was a line of mine in there somewhere too that it didn't quite sounded like I was responding correctly to the way they were speaking. But again, it was something we just had to deal with and kind of roll with because I couldn't align the schedules. And all my actors work for free, and they're all my friends, and I'm so grateful for all of them. So anything I can do to make it easier for them and for them not to have to get rescheduled or come back because they already took time out of their busy lives to be here, I'm going to do it. So we never get to see that big wide group shot that I really, really wanted to see. And we don't... I think the worst part of it was trying to edit the sequence of when everyone gets up to leave. Because, like I said, they were all separate, so I couldn't show them all leaving together. So I had to kind of pick and choose my moments of where to cut to who was moving where, and how it was all going to line up. So I tried as quickly as I could to plan it out ahead of time in my brain, but it didn't necessarily work out the way I wanted it to. So it may look a little choppy and a little like, what's going on in this scene? Why are they all leaving in such an awkward fashion? But this is kind of the only scene where we really revealed the theme of the movie, was that, you know, like Scream, the first one assessed horror movies in general. Scream 2 assessed sequels. Scream 3 assessed trilogies. Scream 4 assessed modern horror. And Scream 5 was an examination of requels, sequels that use some of the legacy cast and stuff like that. But in Stab 2, it's an assessment and an evaluation of fan films and what the rules of a fan films are and how to make a good fan film and what to expect from fan films and what you may need to know if you find yourself caught in a real life fan film that's being made by a serial killer, which sometimes making these movies, I wonder if any of these fans are going to start to come for us after them. Like, I hope it's something that never ever happens, but we make a lot of movies where people are constantly trying to kill us and we play ourselves. So it's a little bit of a freaky thing to think about if you put a lot of thought into it, that somebody would come and kill the cast of a YouTube movie. So, but it was a fun idea to present, and I've never seen it done before where the rules were being examined about the fan films as opposed to just horror movies in general. This is the sequence I'm talking about where everyone was leaving, and I had to kind of pick and choose where to cut and who to show and how to cut to make it look like they were kind of walking together, and who was there and who wasn't, and what a pain in the ass this scene was. But in the end, I think it's worth it, and it's not as bad as I think it is because I had to suffer through the trauma of trying to edit it together and make it all work. But for the most part, it worked and it played out really well. This sequence is actually funny too because it cuts to a scene that we had filmed previously to this, because Dalen, who plays Movie Josh and himself, is from out of state. So anything that was filmed with him happened kind of over one weekend too. And the scene has a bunch of reshoots in it as well. None of them of Dalen, but this was kind of a hurried scene. We were super, super busy this day. There was a lot to film. So trying to get it all squeezed in was kind of like rushing, and I'm notorious for not really like storyboarding or super planning out my shots. I kind of just like to go with it and see the shots through the camera and then plan how I'm going to edit it as I go, which I don't always recommend. It's not everybody's cup of tea. But again, you'll notice like that shot of Erica is a different color than the rest of the shots because it's a reshoot, because it was a line that we either forgot to record or it was out of focus or something went wrong. Same with Emily right there. And the camera settings had gotten messed with on one of the scenes that we were in, and I was just never quite able to correct them back to what they looked like before. So it was definitely challenging, and I did what I could with it. And I'm sure people notice that it's like different lighting. I don't know if they assume that it's from reshoots, but that's what happened. So these four together, though, they worked really great together, and it was really fun. Emily and Mia already know each other. Erica and Dalen were definitely the newbies, but they all got along so great and played off each other so well. Emily does such a great job. I love how natural she is in delivering her lines, too. And her character is just kind of like so sweet and caring and understanding and motivated. And I loved writing in that little conflict between Mia and Dalen, because Dalen's supposed to really be the over-dramatized version of me, so to have him kind of being catty and cunty with somebody else was just hilarious to me. Erica, too, selling her performance. Erica, like I said, was Jennifer's replacement, so her just diving into production while we were already halfway through filming and just picking it up like that, she did such a good job. And we worked a lot to try to find the right levels of her character, because her character is definitely irritated that she's not finding any answers, but I wanted her to still be likable to the audience because she is a beautiful girl. So casting her as kind of the girl next door type was a little bit challenging because she doesn't look like the girl next door type. She looks like the Instagram model type. So that proved to be a little bit tricky, but her acting, I think, pays off. And I think we found the right levels of how irritated she is trying to find answers, but how nice of a person her character actually is, too. And I loved working with Dalen, my little mini-me, my little clone. It was just so much fun. We had such a great time together, and he's such a fun guy and so polite and so dedicated. And like I said, he flew out here from Tennessee just to be in one of our YouTube movies. So that was really, really cool, and I love it. And I really try to play up the creepiness of him in these shots, too. And it was just something that kind of happened that day because it was fun. So we played it up and kind of rolled with it. So these were filmed out of order too. The weekend of Dalen's filming. Like this scene was actually filmed before the previous scene. And this was another scene too that no matter what I did to the camera, I could just not fix how blown out it was from the sunshine. And of course, my landlord started doing some work on the house, like right as we were filming this. So there's all these piles of crap everywhere. But this actually ended up getting darkened quite a bit during editing, which ended up working out in the end because I also started adding in a digitally rendered thunderstorm in this scene to make continuity proper from the clouds rolling in before. And then the next scene we're going to see after the podcast, we filmed in actual rain. So I needed the rain to start here. So this is all digital rain, which is why you'll notice that Dalen and the killer are actually not getting wet. And same thing with the lightning. I just kind of added that in to sell the fact that this was now a thunderstorm. And this killer is actually played by my friend Nick, because I didn't have anyone else available that day, and he was here with the special effects makeup artist Anna, so it just worked out, and he's a good friend of mine, so he's like, fine, sure, I'll do it, I'll hop in the costume. Again, the shots of the security camera where we don't get to see the perspective through the security camera because I'm too stupid to remember to shoot them. I love Dalen's death scene, though. The slit throat prosthetic came out really good. And then the digital special effects guy actually corrected a bunch of stuff, too, because you could kind of see, like, tubes hanging out of his neck, or you could see the seams of the prosthetic. So a lot of that got corrected digitally, too, just to make it look better, and a little more blood was added in as well. But overall, that was a great scene to film. And one of my favorite parts about making these movies is it really is a giant collaborative process between a lot of people who just do it for the love of making these movies. So to have special effects artists and digital effects artists, actors, composers, and everyone come in and work for free just because we want to contribute to something that we're working on together, it's such an awesome feeling, and it's the reason that I still make these movies 12 years later. The people that show up and are committed and really enjoy the process makes everything so worth it. And I'm so happy to keep making these movies for our fans because they're just as loyal and dedicated as my actors and crew. So thank you all so much. So this scene was not in the original script, and after I had corrected a few things in the script during filming and production had wrapped, I decided that I didn't like that Mia and Emily were the only two characters that got away. They were the only two that actually lived aside from Ethan. And I was like, nope, we gotta fix that. Everybody needs to die because this is more of an anthology and these characters aren't coming back again. So we might as well go back and add in a little more horror to the movie and a couple more kills and really amp up the level of violence in this movie. And much to my surprise, both Emily and Mia, and additionally Henry, were so willing and gung-ho to come back. Henry really enjoys playing the killer, and Emily and Mia were so excited to get a death scene. I guess they were actually really disappointed that they didn't have one in the original script. So it actually worked out. The rain, however, was not something we were anticipating, and that had to be corrected. You'll also notice that Henry is now in the black pants and black boots, to kind of give you a clue that he might be the killer, because if you notice in the last scene he was in, he was actually in shorts. But surprise, now he has the killer's pants and boots on. And we do that little thing where you hear him go, ugh! And he just kind of disappears. And the killer coming in through the trunk is actually a little bit of a tribute to the first Scream when Sydney's in the cop car. But it was just something else fun to add into this. But it really was pouring rain. You can see it outside the windows. So that made the audio, again, a little bit challenging. And there was some ADR in the earlier part of the scene. But both of these girls and Henry just absolutely kill it in the scene. When I brought them back initially for the death scene, we talked about how they wore clothes that they weren't intending to get bloody, especially that beautiful dress like that Mia's wearing and Emily's beautiful skirt. So I wanted to write in death scenes that didn't have any blood. So my original idea I came up with was for Emily's neck break first, and there is a little bit of blood coming out of her mouth in it, but it's actually digital, and it was added in by the special effects guy. And then Mia's death actually was suggested to me by Rachel. I kind of asked the cast if they had any ideas how I could kill people without blood. And Rachel came up with that super sadistic idea for her to have asthma and for the killer to kind of kick the inhaler away from her so she couldn't save herself, and she's actually killed by asthma, not the killer. So Mia's running in heels for a lot of this too, but if you look close, you'll notice that she's actually in sneakers for a lot of the running because it is dangerous out in these woods where we were. It was raining, so everything was slippery, and I really didn't want her getting hurt or breaking her ankle just to film a movie for me. See, Henry just slipped right there. So if you look close, you can actually see that she's in different shoes a couple of times, but I tried to crop it out as much as I could. And this was another one too, this one little sequence. We were going to originally have Henry come over and kick that inhaler further away from her. But the way the blocking was working, and we were trying to rush because I felt bad that these actors were filming in the rain, and it was actually cold that day as opposed to hot. So it's just kind of laying next to her, which I think plays out well too, because it's like, it's right there, girl, just hit it. Just grab it, you can save yourself. And the killer looking at her like, I'm going to stab you. Oh, wait. Maybe I don't have to. And you're dead. I guess I don't have to kill you. I'm out of here. Thanks anyways. That was fun while it lasted. Glad we had that chase scene. But I'm glad we did that. It was one of my favorite scenes that we added into the movie. And I think it gave those characters an additional level of humanness. And Mia and Emily's performances in their death scenes were just absolutely fantastic. I really, really enjoyed doing that scene. This scene was actually the second to last scene that we filmed at the hotel. So it was the only scene that wasn't filmed in order at the hotel, and it's just because of the timing of it, because I needed it to be evening or nighttime or whatever it was, which ironically, the way it plays out, you can't even tell because the curtains in this bedroom are closed. But we actually filmed this, so Henry and Sherry are actually just sitting in the other room waiting for the next scene that they're in to come up, while Ashley and Rachel are in here filming this. And I love this scene. I think Ashley and Rachel's acting in it is on point for both of them, and they both did such a good job because it is one of the more dramatic scenes in the movie too. It's one of the only times too where Ashley's character is more concerned about Rachel's well-being than what's going on, and she has way less attitude in it, and it shows that they have this connection aside from a working relationship. But this is the big reveal where we find out that Rachel's whole book and the Lifetime movie, the only evidence of my character stealing the idea for the Stab reboot from a real Claire Matthews is this one stupid letter. And I loved the contrast of that because it's like, yeah, sure, if you got that letter, it was probably upsetting and it probably made you question some things. But instead of writing a book about it and turning it into a Lifetime movie, maybe we could have just had a conversation and worked it out. But I loved that dynamic for Rachel's character because Rachel doesn't usually get to play anyone that's a little bit shady. So for her to be such a sweet person, but to have this kind of ulterior motive of hiding the fact that she doesn't have any actual evidence, I think it was interesting for her to play, and I think it adds a different level of interesting to her character as well. So this scene was another really quick and easy scene to film. They both did such a good job. They were both so prepared with their lines, and I think they both found the right level of emotions in the scene too. So I'm actually really happy with this scene. The audio was a little wonky, but overall, it was a great scene to film, and we had a great time doing it. So now we move back to Nicole's house, and the scene that this was initially supposed to start with was a scene between Ariana and Nicole's daughter, Sierra. But Sierra, being a typical teenager, decided to quit the movie last minute, and we had to cut that scene, which was sad because it was one of my actual favorite scenes that I had written for the movie, because they kind of prank called Nikki before Nikki got this actual phone call from the killer. And it was just a super cute teenage bonding scene, so I'm really sad that we had to cut it out. And it actually plays out funny that we don't ever see Sierra because Nicole is constantly yelling to her and talking to her. This is another shot that I wish I could redo too, because the camera just decided that it was going to change the lighting throughout the whole thing, and we only did like 3 or 4 takes of this because it was another one that I wanted the entire phone call in one take just to make it feel like it was playing out in real time. So Nikki did a great job, but the camera kind of fucked up her shots, and it definitely upset me a little bit to see it after, because you don't really notice it while you're filming. So if I could, I would have reshot it, but we just didn't have time. So I love writing in Nicole fight scenes because, like I said, in real life, she's a bad bitch too. Like, you do not want to fuck with Nikki. And I love that she's one of the characters that actually runs and tries to fight the killer right away. She's half his size, and she's all about just throwing down with him, protecting her kids, defending her house, and she just gets in there. She did accidentally hit Henry in that pretty fucking hard, and you can see it in the bloopers too. So, and poor Ariana, she doesn't have much left in this movie after that scene got cut. So she was here all day and night just to film these tiny little sequences. And initially, Sierra and Ariana were both supposed to come out and help Nicole fight off the killer. So, like I said, it does get a little bit awkward, like in this moment here. I love Ariana's line there. She's so cute. But then Nicole just yelling to her daughter, like, come on, we're leaving. Like, I hope you can run by this killer because I'm already outside. But overall, it was a super fun scene to film, and they did a great job. This scene of Corey is actually an additional shoot too. After production had wrapped and I had edited the whole movie together, I realized that the movie was running a bit short, especially having to cut that scene with Sierra and Ariana. It kind of chopped out a good 6 minutes of the movie there. So in addition to writing in the death scenes for Emily and Mia, I added in the documentary sequence and the podcaster sequences, and then this little sequence with Corey. And I actually ended up really loving the sequence with Corey. It gives Corey an active duty feel to his character too. So we see that his cop character is doing more than just coming to my house to warn me about impending doom. It actually shows him a little bit in action. And it's a long, drawn out kind of suspenseful scene where the killer could really pop out at any moment, and I think that's what the audience is expecting to see. They're expecting to see the killer come flying out from one of those cars, or to be hidden in that dark alley where he had killed Dalen earlier. I love the shots. The flashlight, something about the light in it, the flare of it, I just love it. Corey did such a good job, especially with the acting in his face. And I think once we got deeper into the movie, Corey's acting just kept getting better. But, like, look how determined he is to figure out what's going on. But he's still so apprehensive. He's a cop. It's his job. He has to go check this out. He wants to protect his cousin. But at the same time, there's that slight bit of, oh, fuck, I hope I don't die. So this ended up being one of my favorite sequences just because of how long and drawn out it is. And you can actually see blood on the ground from Dalen's slit throat and the crime scene tape, which I thought was a funny addition, but that would be real. And it's never really mentioned in the movie that we find his body back there or anything, but now you know. And then we do the classic, it's just a cat. And we didn't do the cat jump scare because that's just a cat puppet, because we didn't have a stunt cat ready to go, but... So this scene, we had actually already filmed once with the other actress, Jennifer, but once we had to recast her and add Erica in, we had to refilm the whole sequence again. So the only part of the scene that didn't get reshot is Corey's death scene, but Corey still had to be here for filming that night because he interacts with us, so he had to come back again. Thank goodness I had 2 exact versions of his costume so we could recycle it. But this night was one of my favorite nights of filming too, because my buddy Matt Arsenal came and helped film. And he even brought more lighting and stuff like that too. So I really just got to focus on directing the other actors and acting, which is usually I'm running around doing every single thing behind the scenes. So the shots of Nicole in her car were filmed separately on the night that we filmed her actual attack scene too. So those were filmed after this scene and then cut back in later. And she's the only one that we didn't dub her audio in the car, so her audio is a little bit harder to hear. But it is one of those moments, too, where the car is just stationary and we're kind of moving lights by it to make it look like she's driving. And she's just kind of wiggling the wheel and I'm bouncing the camera. But I'm so grateful for Matt showing up. We did have this minor issue, though. This is where the camera's settings got messed with because Matt is super good at what he does and he's very artistic. So having him come and shoot the scene, you'll notice like the coloring is a little bit different and it's a little bit grainier because he didn't want it to look overexposed. And I usually shoot overexposed because it's easier to make things darker than it is to make them brighter. And I really was trying to focus on the 4K quality. So underexposing them gave it a little bit of a graininess, which is okay because it kind of makes it feel more like a stab movie. But it doesn't quite match the rest of the movie. But like I said, the amount of work that Matt put into this, I honestly don't really give a fuck that the shots are a little bit grainier, a little bit darker, and they look a little bit different from the rest of the movie because he got some great shots and he saved me hours and hours and hours worth of work. This was another night that was 100,000 degrees. So we were all dripping sweat, and to have him there really just working for free and putting in the effort to contribute something to this project means the absolute world to me. And this was a really fun sequence to film too. So it was nice not having to be behind the camera because it allowed me and Erica a little bit more time to play with our characters and to play with each other in an acting sense. And we just had such a good time with it too. And there's this like fun level of drama but comedy mixed in, which again is something I keep trying to shoot for in these movies. So, and the killer like interjecting right here to like correct us, like, we don't have anything to worry about. He's like, yeah, you do, shift change. And we both go, shit. And it's just like, it was so much fun to film this scene. And this was another scene too where Ethan had to come back just to film his little outside sequence. And you'll actually, there's someone's sunglasses are on the counter back there. I believe they're Erica's from the scene earlier. I don't know why they're back there. Don't know what happened there. So there are a couple little teeny mistakes in here added in, but I love trying to work in that screen painting into as many of the shots as possible too, just because it's such a fun little parody. And if you look up on the fridge too, next to Erica, not in this shot, we fixed it for that shot, but you could actually see someone's can of soda up there too. There's, like I said, there's little continuity errors when we film for hours and hours at a time. So this whole sequence, like I said, was actually filmed on the night that we filmed this scene initially with Jennifer. So that's Henry in the costume killing Corey. And then all of the reactions of me and Erica are filmed during the reshoot night of this scene. So, and initially my character didn't really react too much to Corey getting killed. So, and it's kind of odd that he just stands there and doesn't try to help. But I don't know, like, how much do you assist your friend when there's a serial killer? And here's the switch from my character being upset to just being motivated. You could actually see one of the lights real quick there too. But he's just motivated to survive at this point. He moves on real fast, which is still a little offensive, I think, to Corey's character, but that's one of my favorite shots in the whole movie. I love what Matt did with that. I love that fast zoom in. And then this sequence was really tricky to film too, because the lighting we had outside kept going out, and you could see I'm covered in sweat because we did so many takes of us like running away, and Erica and I kept having little bloopers in here because we were laughing. And Ethan just kills it in this scene too, though. I love the different levels of, like, Ethan's an onion. He says it in his behind the scenes interview. Like, this character has so many different levels, and it's fun to see his playful side. It's fun to see his serious side. It's fun to see his offended side. So, he did such a great job. And you'll notice the lighting improved in some of the shots too, and then doesn't. I also love this shot for some reason of us getting into my Jeep. It's just like a really cool shot. The lighting looks really neat. The way the brake lights turn on and light up the background and the headlights. I don't know. I just love everything about that shot. And us kind of speeding away and leaving Ethan in the dust. And this is to make you feel bad for him. But at the end, the very, very end of the movie, you realize you probably shouldn't be feeling bad for him. So this is also filmed on the same night. And we were stationary for a lot of it. When you see the car moving, obviously we're driving the car then, but all these shots were not actually moving, and I have someone standing outside, I believe it's Corey in the scene, moving a light in a circular motion so it looks like the street lamps above us. And then all of the audio from this scene actually had to be dubbed. Even on Rachel's side too, we don't have an external microphone. We film with a microphone that's attached to the camera. It is an additional microphone attached to the camera, but since we're filming from outside the car, the audio wasn't great. So we actually had to ADR all of these lines, and it was a pain in the ass to try to get your mouth to line up. These shots of me are the only ones that aren't ADR'd, and they're actually from a reshoot night that I did all by myself, because it was just easier to re-record the close-up shots of me in the car without Erica, and then I didn't have to go back in and ADR the whole scene. Shots of Ashley and Rachel in this scene were actually filmed on a separate night as well. They were filmed on the same night as the scene that follows this scene. So it was kind of fun to cut it together later and see how well it fit together. But I used the same technique on them, where they were in a stationary car and I bounced the camera, and Erica was in charge of moving the lights around that time to look like the street lamps. But it was a really fun scene to film, and they did it very, very quickly. And Rachel's actually a master of ADR. Like, she just killed it. Like, it just comes naturally to her, and I was so impressed with her ADRing. And then the shots that you see of the screen in my car are actually their whole own night of filming. I just had to go back and add those in because it was something we didn't get to see, but it gave a little bit more depth to the scene to have something else to cut away to. So this scene is outside of the production studio where they filmed a good portion of Stabbed in the Back, the Lifetime movie inside of Stab 2. And it's actually filmed in the parking lot of a public library. I searched forever to find a location that looked like a film studio, and I couldn't find one. But I like this location, and we filmed here before, and they actually have these big doors that you'll see us walk up to at the end of the scene that look like we could be entering a production studio. The gimmick to this was the library was closed, and they had this exterior lighting that was on that was absolutely gorgeous, and we filmed probably like 8/10 of the scene, and then somehow we didn't realize that the lighting was actually on an automatic timer and it turned off. Luckily, I always travel with lighting as a just-in-case scenario, but we had to go back to the beginning of the scene and refilm everything because the lighting was so drastically different. And then I actually ended up darkening the scene anyways, which was kind of surprising, I think, to a lot of the actors in the scene, that I made it darker. But I wanted there to be a reason for us to have flashlights on. So I wanted you to be able to see us, but at the same time, I needed a reason for those flashlights to be on. So you could see the big doors behind Rachel right there too, and they were locked, so she just kind of pushes on them and then we never see him. That shot of Ghostface was actually supposed to be a shot of Ghostface watching us from the woods, but it was something that we never actually filmed. So it was actually a shot of Ghostface from the opening, no, not from the opening, from Corey's death scene, where he was looking back at me through the door after he killed Corey. And I just ended up zooming in and cropping it and making it work as that shot. So now we're in the finale of the movie, and this was probably the longest day of filming, and quite possibly the least favorite day of filming for me in the beginning. What you just saw too with me opening that was actually a green screen, but because of the lighting you can't see that it was a green screen, but it was even scripted to be a green screen to have an excuse of how they added the door in, but it just kind of looks like a black curtain behind the other curtains. But the scene, like I said, was the longest thing that we filmed. If you peek closely at the door behind me, you can see a little bit of sunlight peeking through, because I actually started this really, really early in the day. We started at noon, and we filmed into, see, there's the sunlight, and we filmed until much later into the night. It's supposed to be a nighttime scene, obviously, so I blacked out my entire apartment, and this is the shut down movie set from Stabbed in the Back. So in reality, it is still my apartment, but it's supposed to be the set that was being worked on again after filming had shut down, and now they're getting it ready for the sequel. This day of filming, too, was quite possibly the hottest day of filming that we had during all of production, which sucked because my house does not have central AC. So only 2 of the rooms that you never see in the scene, the 2 back rooms, they're the only 2 rooms with AC, and we had to keep pointing fans out and trying to cool off the apartment because it was so hot in there, you wouldn't believe it. So this is another scene where some of the audio was really messed up because we had to have the fans on. We had to have the ACs running because we were gonna die. Because there are 6 of us on set this day. Ethan and Henry are the only 2 you haven't seen yet in these shots, but there were 6 of us there creating even more body heat. So it was a really hot, long, challenging day, but I think everybody really made the most of it. I think everyone was really excited for this little Home Alone montage too. Maybe not so excited that they had to actually set it up themselves as part of the shots, but I think we had a really good time doing it. And I really love the way the ending of this movie plays out because it's presented not as serious as the rest of the movie, and there was a good amount of comedy in the rest of the movie too, but I wanted the ending especially not to take itself too seriously because a lot of ridiculous stuff happens in the ending, and the fact that Home Alone is even mentioned already kind of tells you that there's a whole bunch of comedy coming your way. And it was a lot of work to make that or find that level of horror, seriousness, and comedy at the same time, because like I said, I enjoy making the movies a little bit cheesy, but you don't want to go too far because the audience will be like, well, this is just stupid. So instead, I kind of have the characters present to the audience that they know how stupid this is. So when the killer finally reveals himself and starts to reveal his motive, mine and Rachel's characters just kind of stand there like, huh, really? That's why you're doing this? And we kind of like make fun of the situation. So I love how everyone overreacts to the door opening, and it ends up being the reveal of Ethan, and he gets shot and he goes down pretty hard. And even in the original version of the script, this doesn't kill Ethan, and he was still wearing the bulletproof vest. So the lines that he's delivering right now about how he followed us here because he wanted to see why I didn't want to hang out with him and why I was upset with him is actually like really touching. And we did a couple of takes of it to find the right levels, and there was a much more emotional take of it too that I ended up not using because of the way I ended up rewriting the ending of the script and having Ethan be a killer. I chose this take because Ethan seems sincere, but there's also that level of maybe I'm acting a little bit. That shot of us reacting to the killer coming through the door is so hilarious to me. It's so overacted on all of our parts, and that was intentional, and it's so funny. There's a lot of stunts in this scene too, and as I mentioned earlier, nobody in this movie is a stunt performer, so the actors really had to try really hard to make these stunts look even semi-decent, and some of them worked super well, some of them didn't work that well, some of them were in the middle, but it was still a really fun scene to film. No matter how hot and sweaty it was on that set and how long of a day it was, there was this common camaraderie on set, and everybody really gave it their all, and they were super committed to helping. And one of the most touching things about this scene is that every single person that is in this scene helped film some of the shots in the scene. Because my character is so heavily involved in the ending, I didn't want to have to make everyone wait super long amounts of time while I had to set up shots of myself. Because to me, during the productions, I'm the least important person. Like, it's about everyone else's time and commitments. So I try to make things as easy on them as possible. But this was one of the instances where they all helped make things easy on me. So I'm pretty sure it was like Henry filming the shots of me and Rachel right there. Erica films a good portion of the scene. Ethan filmed some of the shots, Rachel filmed some of the shots, Ashley filmed some of the shots, and that's something that has never, ever happened before. Rachel has helped out a bunch in the past movies with filming, like a bunch, but we've never really had the other actors hold the camera and point it at me or the other actors. So it was such a touching moment, because like I said, one of the best parts about making these movies is how it's a giant collaborative process and how everybody really just wants to contribute to making it the best we can. So this is a shot, again, filmed by Erica. So it's really, really, really touching to me that they were also just gung-ho to do it. I said, hey guys, I might need your help. So at some point I may just hand you guys the camera and be like, here, shoot this shot. So I would show them how to focus it, where the record button was. And then I'm like, let your artistic flag fly. Let's see what we can get for shots in this, because I set up some really cool lighting in this because it's a movie set. So I wanted there to be a little bit of exposed lighting. I wanted the colors to kind of be fun and fanciful because it's a ridiculous ending, like I said. So just having everybody contribute and having everybody not complain about having to help with holding the camera, it just meant so much to me. Because like I said, it was 1,000,000,000 degrees in my apartment that day, and they were all working their asses off already with the acting and the stunts and stuff like that. So to have them all go above and beyond really, really meant a lot to me. So let me just kind of rave about Henry in this scene too. When I wrote this scene, I knew whoever was going to end up playing this part was going to have a hard time, because the paragraphs of monologues I wrote for this killer's character were just insane, and Henry just memorized it all and did such a great job. That's a good example of the level of comedy in the ending scene too, Rachel grabbing the rubber knife, a little bit of a tribute to Scream 3, and something that we've always kind of wanted to do too, is have either a fake knife switched out for a real knife or a real knife switched out for a fake knife. And that kind of shows that anything can happen in this ending too. When Rachel goes down, a lot of our core characters and actors from our previous movies get taken out pretty quickly, and it really makes the ending a little bit unpredictable. So Henry delivering these lines, though, like I was saying, it was just absolutely nuts. It was pages and pages of monologue for him. So I think Henry has never really acted before in front of the camera. He's usually behind the camera directing people and stuff. So this was definitely a challenge for him, and I think it's a challenge that he conquered very well. I don't know personally that I could memorize that many paragraphs of lines and be able to deliver them back to back like that. And if you watch the behind the scenes interview with him, you'll discover how much work and effort and time it actually took him to memorize all these lines. But he did a great job, and I think the heat was a huge motivator for everyone too to get all of their stuff right away, because some of them I think foolishly showed up to set like, oh, we'll probably be done around 7 or 8, and I'm like, no friends, this is the finale. There's stunts, there's blood, there's so much involved, so hang on tight, we're going to be here for a long time. So this is where the action really starts to pick up. And it's one of the moments that goes super Home Alone, too, because we were waiting to use those paint cans. So when I pull them, we did a couple of takes of this, and Henry getting hit, his face is just so Marv from Home Alone, it cracks me up. And this little fight sequence definitely took some effort, but it was super, super fun to film. I think you can actually kind of see the excitement on mine and Henry's face of how much we enjoyed filming this little fight scene. And this is something that we never get to see in a lot of the Stab movies either, is that all of the survivors that are here kind of gang up to take down the killer, which was their plan, and they're trying to follow through the best they can. It's just Henry's character, the Uber driver killer fan, is just super resourceful, and he's very good at taking out his victims. So, but it was really, really cool to allow the characters to kind of team up to take them all out, because everybody gets in a good dig at him. Erica got him in that chokehold. Ashley hit him with that crowbar. Rachel in this fucking chainsaw scene. That's one of my favorite things we've ever shot. It's so funny. I absolutely love this sequence. They both killed it. They did such a good job. I can't talk about it enough. And then Ethan comes in and blows his brains out. So it was this huge group effort to take out the killer. And initially, this is kind of where the movie was supposed to wrap up. We still had this little bit of a sequence play out where we discover that everybody is still alive. And they survived their wounds, and hopefully they're going to get some medical attention to survive into what could be a sequel. And then about 3 days before we filmed the scene, I came up with the idea to add in Ethan as the second killer. He's kind of pegged to be the killer throughout the movie. He's definitely the biggest red herring throughout the movie, even though he's one of the nicest characters in the movie. But once he got shot, I realized that the audience probably wouldn't really consider him too much of a threat anymore. And then he comes back and saves the day by killing Henry. So it's kind of an unexpected left turn, and that's something that I really, really like to do in the movies. And everybody was so game for it. Nobody was upset that they died. They all kind of enjoyed the fact that they all died. And Ethan's performance, he only has this like 45 seconds of him going completely fucking psychotic, and he just slays it. Like, it's almost as if Ethan should have been the one to reveal himself and give that crazy ass long monologue. But I just love the way this plays out in the end. I love that he goes back to finish me off because he remembers that I survived Mark's vicious attack in the opening, which I shouldn't have survived in real life. And what a crazy way to end a stab movie. It's never ever happened like that before, where all of the main characters die and only one of the killers gets away. So overall, Stab 2 was super fun. And I think we got to recycle a lot of the fun ideas that we've used in other movies and kind of play upon them and build upon them and make them bigger. And then we also got to do stuff that we've never done before because of people working with us, like the special effects guy, and being able to add in fire and explosions and all this other levels of craziness that we haven't really got to explore before. And the new equipment, the 4K video, like, this movie really is a step up. Yes, it could still be improved upon. Yes, we still have a lot to learn about the new equipment, but overall, Stab 2 came out great and is actually probably one of my favorite Stab movies that we've made so far. So of course we have the classic photo ending here too, because everybody always requests them, and I try to make them a little different by adding in all these little blood transitions in between them. But it's something that the fans always expect for us to do, so I made sure that I did it this time too. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching Stab 2 with my commentary. There is so much more behind the scenes information that I didn't really get to talk about because I'm talking so fast to try to get as much information out as possible while doing this commentary, and I'm definitely losing my voice right now from this. But we do have a behind the scenes documentary. It's called Behind the Mask. StabMovies.com, Behind the Mask, and we make them for every single movie that we make. So to see Behind the Mask of Stab 2, it's actually part 20 of StabMovies.com, Behind the Mask. Check that out, and you can hear interviews with all of these beautiful actors that you're seeing being displayed on their photos right now. And like I said, there's so much more behind the scenes information about filming and production and people playing their parts and what they went through during filming. Thank you again so much for all of your support. I love you, my stabbers, so much. We've been doing this for 12 years now, and it just doesn't look like it's ever going to stop because we have so much fun doing it, and we have so much fun making these movies for you. So thank you for all of your support, for always being there, and I hope you enjoyed Stab 2 as much as we enjoyed making it for you.